Hello everyone. So I was recently reminded of my interest in wargaming Mughals. Reason being that there's a channel that I watch called Corvinus Wargaming, who wargames in 15mm. But he made a comment on a recent video that he was looking to acquire a 15mm Mughal army and noted that there weren't really many ranges available, and that in previous times he had thought about doing it in 28mm and encountered the same problem. There's just a dearth of ranges around. So I was reminded of period way back in the past when I had begun to put together a collection of 28mm Mughal figures, drawing on a range that wasn't around for very long called Bearsden, which was a company up in Glasgow who produced these figures that you see before you now. So it didn't really get very far off the ground, the project. I have added to my collection. I've painted more, I haven't added to the collection because I bought a lot of figures at the time, still have a lot unpainted. But I did paint up. I'll show you them in a bit more detail later on, but those figures at the back there, camera's not focusing very well on them, but the elephant and a commando and a rocket crew. But I wanted to talk mainly about these cavalry figures. Yeah, so it didn't get very far really, partly because although I did have a lot of figures, I was a little bit disappointed when Bearsden stopped, went out of business. I think that was due to family circumstances or health issues. And I did find another source of figures that I've got quite a lot of unpainted still in my lead mountain, with a company called Indus that I got from Wargames Emporium in Sheffield. But again, they don't seem to have been around for quite a few years now. And as far as I can see, there isn't really any dedicated 28mm figures out there now, except I've just discovered that these figures, the old Bearsden's ones, are now available again from a website called The Little Corporal, and they're under the title of TLC Miniatures. Now they must have acquired the moulds at some stage, because the figures are identical, but they're only cast to order. So it says on the website that it is quite a long turnaround between ordering and receiving the models. It takes about 3 weeks, because they cast them to order. They don't have any that they can dispatch to you off the shelf, as it were. The other thing that put me off really and kind of stalled my enthusiasm was that for some reason, I never really understand my thinking, I decided to paint them using very poor quality paints, the kind of acrylic paints you can buy for £1 a bottle in art and craft stores. And the reason I sort of did that was that I was in a hobby shop at the time. We're talking probably about 20 years ago, maybe even longer now. But I was in this craft shop, and they had a massive box of paints that they were trying to sell off cheaply. So they were cheaper than the usual cheap price, and I just thought, yeah, I'll get all those. So there's some quite bright and vibrant colours in there, and colour wise, I was happy with them. but the quality of the paint, the poor quality of the paint really showed through, and they dried very kind of chalky like thick heavy kind of applications of the paint. Didn't look nice at all, and I didn't really do much in terms of highlighting and shading or anything. I'm more accustomed to using triad systems, and I didn't do a great deal in the way of mixing colours, to highlight some of the colours or anything. So they were very flat. So anyway, to cut a long story short, they sat in my in my collection for a long time, never being used. I'd actually based them. This gives you another idea of how long ago this was. I'd based them for Armati, so they were 3 figures to a base and very crowded together with the DBX standard of basing. So when Studio Tomahawk brought out the Crescent and Cross supplement to Saga, I got them out and used them as a proxy for Saracens. I mean, they're nothing like Saracens, but I thought I could use them as a proxy just to, play test the rules and so on. So I rebased them individually at that point, but again, was never really happy with the way I had painted the bases. I used Wargames Foundry base sand triad, and if any of you are familiar with that paint set, it's a really kind of gaudy yellowish colour. Doesn't really do for what it says on the tin as a base sand colour. It's one of the few paints from Wargames Foundry that I don't really like, and I've stopped using it in the main. But it would probably work for other purposes, but it just doesn't work on bases. So what I did after I saw, after I'd been reminded of the Mughals from this video that Corvinus Wargaming put up, was I thought it wouldn't take me too long to kind of revitalise these figures and touch them up a little bit. And that's what I've done, and this is the result that you can now see before you. If I take a few of the figures out and put them more front and centre, you can see the kind of effect I've achieved. So the 2 things I've done is that I've given them all a lot more depth by giving them a kind of coating with Nuln Oil, Citadel tone, I suppose it is, Nuln Oil, which I've only recently discovered. I tend to sort of steer away from Citadel products in general, and I shouldn't. I'm sort of prejudiced against Games Workshop, and I shouldn't allow my prejudice to interfere with my acceptance of the fact that they do have some quality products. And Nuln Oil I would certainly recommend. Unlike a normal wash, doesn't tend to kind of collect so heavily in recesses and so on. So it doesn't give the model, if you do use it, it doesn't give the figure that kind of dirty, grimy appearance that a lot of washes and inks and so on do. So for instance, with this figure here, it's going to be difficult to get a good focus on this, but the tassels on the bottom of the sort of barding of the horse, are all kind of separated now by the Nuln Oil, running the Nuln Oil in. Before that was just a plain kind of blue sort of colour. So it's had a really nice outcome, I think. I'm very happy with that. And let's bring some others in. And it's just given the figure, they're still not, brilliantly painted figures, but they're going to be all right. The 3-foot rule is going to apply to them now. Previously, they really did look dreadful, and that slowed me down a lot when I was actually painting them. I remember the last couple of them, it took me about a year to complete them because I could just never, summon up the enthusiasm to put paint on them at the time, and that's what sort of killed off my my interest in the Mughals for a long time. But I think now, when I get time, heaven knows when that will be, I am going to, add to this. It's not. It doesn't even warrant the name of an army yet. I've got 20 mounted figures, an elephant, a commander, and a rocket gun. And that's it. But the Mughal period is, I don't understand the lack of figure availability really, and the lack of wargaming interest in it, because the figures themselves are so colourful. It's such an eventful period of history. I mean, it covers the Great Mughals, the 6 Great Mughals cover a period of, what would it be, about over 200 years, from Babur through to Aurangzeb. Lots of warfare, lots of battles to choose from, internecine fighting between various claimants to the Mughal throne, and internal conflicts to India, between the Mughals and the Marathas, for instance. So plenty of wargaming possibility there. Lots of colour, lots of exotic kind of troop types, like the elephants and like the rocket guns. So yeah, I'm quite happy with the way. I've just given a little bit of a lift to the figures, but it's going to be enough to mean that I can play with them without being too embarrassed by them. I think I've heard Nuln Oil described as liquid talent in a bottle, and that's exactly what it is. It has really made all the difference with these figures. And the basing as well. So I repainted the bases, and I put on a lot of tufts, which I very gratefully received as a free gift from Tajima 1 Miniatures. I purchased quite a lot of tufts from them a couple of months back, and they included a free box of wild grass tufts. So I thought they would be ideal for representing sort of Indian subcontinent terrain. So I've given the bases a kind of dry, almost sort of arid look, but broken up by these wild tufts. Came in very handy indeed. So that's the front row. I'll just give you an overview of the rear rank. Rules wise, I've been thinking as well, I'm never going to have a large force now, so being able to afford to field a force of Mughals to play a large game like like the I don't know the multi-based games, House Caesar or something like that. Again, there aren't really that many rule sets out there that you can choose from. But what I've been thinking is that I've got them all individually based. Something like a version of Lion Rampant would be ideal. But again, even though Lion Rampant has recently expanded into a sort of wider time period and included a lot more armies, it hasn't ventured. It's got steppe tribes in there, I noticed recently, but it hasn't ventured further afield than further east than Byzantium and Russia possibly. So wouldn't it be nice if they brought out another supplement called something like Tiger Rampant, where they had army lists for India and China, Indochina as well, and even Japan. It'd be ideal for my Genpai War figures for Japan. But in the meantime, no reason why I can't produce a sort of some house rules to be able to field an army like the Mughals. So anyway, just thought I'd share that with you, as I'm quite pleased with the effect the Nuln Oil has had, and it didn't take too long to do, so hasn't really interrupted my ponderous painting efforts that are still chugging along, but very rarely produce anything to show you. Never seem to complete anything, but at least I can show you these. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.